All right, welcome to your deep dive. You wanted to explore this book, Ego is the Enemy.
By Ryan Holiday.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday. So we are diving deep today into this book. It looks at, well, the title kind of gives it away, how our ego can really mess things up for us.
Absolutely. And at any stage, too. I mean, whether you are just starting out, you're trying to achieve something big, you're already successful, or even dealing with failure, ego can trip us up.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, that's what I found so interesting about this book is like, it's not just for, people at a certain point in their lives. It's like, we all deal with this.
Right. And
No.
Holiday does a great job of showing us how, through all these historical examples and philosophical ideas.
Yeah, I love that. It's not just like, self-help fluff.
Yeah.
It's like he's really backing it up.
It's grounded. Yeah, it's very grounded.
It's super grounded. And he starts off the book with this quote that I thought was pretty powerful. It's from Richard Feynman. And it is, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool, which I was like, oof.
Right.
That's pretty powerful.
That's a punch in the gut.
Yeah. So before we even dive into the different, phases that Holiday talks about in the book, how would you actually define ego in this context?
Well, it's that voice in our head, the one that's constantly telling us, how great we are, how much we deserve, like, I'm special.
Yeah. I deserve all the things. Yeah.
It's all about me, right? And while that voice can be motivating, it can also be incredibly destructive. It distorts our reality, and it can lead us to make decisions that actually sabotage our own success.
Yeah, I can think of so many times when, I was so focused on being right, proving my point,
Yeah.
that I completely missed out on a chance to actually learn something new.
Oh, yeah. We've
Yeah.
all been there.
Yeah, for sure. And that leads perfectly into the first phase that Holiday talks about in the book, which is aspire, right? Like we're all kind of, working towards something, dreaming big. And he uses this really fascinating example of General William Tecumseh Sherman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to kind of illustrate like how we can manage our ego in this phase while we're chasing after those goals.
And what's interesting about Sherman is he came from a very well-connected family. Like, he had every right to be arrogant and entitled, but he wasn't.
He wasn't flashy at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was super modest. He was much more focused on learning, like doing the work and really rising through the ranks steadily.
And there's this great story at the beginning of the Civil War where he's offered a promotion to brigadier general, which is a huge deal, and he accepts it, but he does so on one condition,
Yeah.
that he doesn't have to actually be in command.
I love that. Like, can you imagine someone doing that today?
No.
Especially, in a competitive field. It's like everybody wants that top spot. They want the recognition, the title, the corner office, all of that.
Yeah, it's so counter to how we're wired today, right?
Yeah.
Promote ourselves, to be seen, to be validated. And Sherman was like, no, I'm not ready for that yet. I still have more to learn.
Yeah, that's a powerful message. It really makes you think about your own motivations. Like, are you chasing a goal because you actually want to grow and learn and contribute? Or is it more about the ego boost? Like the status, the external validation.
And Holiday is really pushing us to examine that, to ask ourselves those tough questions, because he argues that real success comes from focusing on the substance, the work, not the appearances.
Yeah, it's like do the work. Let the work speak for itself.
Exactly. And he even goes on to critique social media, saying it really fuels the cycle of ego and validation seeking.
Oh, yeah. He uses the example of, oh gosh, what was her name? The writer Emily Gould.
Emily Gould,
Yeah.
yeah, who was struggling to write a novel while being completely consumed by the online world.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh, absolutely, especially today. I mean, it's such a constant barrage of information and comparison.
It's so distracting. What do you think is the main takeaway for you from that example?
I think Holiday's really saying that all that noise, all that online chatter, it can drain your creative energy. He's advocating for embracing silence, for focusing on deep work. He even quotes Kierkegaard,
Oh, yeah.
who says, mere gossip anticipates real talk, and to express what is still in thought weakens action by forestalling it. So basically, shh, be quiet, and do the work.
Like the work speak for itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see how that applies to so many fields, even just, life in general. I mean, I feel that pull all the time. The urge to check social media, to see what other people are doing, to compare myself. It can be really distracting.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of discipline to resist that urge and just focus on what you need to do.
It does. It does. And I think, speaking of people who really embodied that idea of letting their work speak for itself, there's this other compelling story in the book about John Boyd,
Oh, yeah.
who was this military strategist.
Fighter pilot
Yeah.
and a brilliant strategist.
Who really chose to focus on making a real impact, even if it meant sacrificing recognition or, climbing the ladder in terms of his career. And he has this great quote where he talks about two paths you can take in life. You can either focus on, getting promoted, getting the bigger office, all of that, or you can focus on doing the work that actually makes a difference, even if it means staying behind the scenes.
And he said, one is to be and the other is to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, which path are you on?
What do you want to do?
Yeah. Which, I mean, that really makes you stop and think, like, what are my actual motivations? What am I really working towards here?
Yeah. And it all ties into this next idea that Holiday emphasizes, the importance of maintaining a student mentality, even when you've achieved a certain level of success.
Yeah. He uses this this great example of Kirk Hammett joining Metallica.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which was already, like, a well-established band at that point. They were huge already.
Yeah. And he could have easily walked in thinking he knew everything. Like, I'm the hotshot guitarist, whatever.
Right.
But he didn't. He actually embraced the opportunity to learn from his new bandmates, to grow as a musician. And, I mean, that's huge.
He wouldn't let his ego get in the way of his own development. And that's something I think we can all learn from. No matter what level we're at, there's always more to learn. There's always room for improvement.
Always, yeah. So it's really about, I think, staying open to feedback.
Yeah.
Being willing to learn from others, even if they're, quote unquote, below you or whatever.
And Holiday talks about this really interesting concept called plus minus equal.
Okay.
It comes from a mixed martial arts champion, Frank Shamrock.
Okay.
And basically, to become truly great, Shamrock says you need someone better than you to learn from, you need someone lesser than you to teach, and then you need someone equal to you to really challenge you.
Ooh, that's really interesting. I like that. So it's not about surrounding yourself with, like, yes men or people that you can just, totally outshine.
Right. It's about creating a feedback loop, surrounding yourself with people who can help you grow and evolve.
That's cool. I like that.
It's a great way to keep your ego in check.
Yeah. And speaking of keeping your ego in check, that kind of brings us to the next phase that Holiday explores in the book, which is, the action phase. Like, this is where things start to get really interesting because it's often where we experience our first taste of success.
Right.
Like, we've been working hard, we've been pursuing those goals, and things are starting to pay off.
But that's also when ego can really start to take hold.
Yeah, because you start believing your own hype.
Right. And you start thinking, oh, I did this all by myself. I'm amazing. Look at me.
I'm a genius.
Yeah, exactly. And you forget about all the factors that contributed to your success, like luck, timing, the support of others.
Right.
It's a dangerous trap that can lead to complacency, arrogance, and ultimately, your downfall.
Yeah, yeah. And to illustrate this point, Holiday uses this really powerful story of Jackie Robinson.
The first African-American player in Major League Baseball.
Yes, who, I mean, his story is just incredible. Think about the pressure he faced, breaking barriers in a sport that was completely segregated.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of racism and hostility he endured is unimaginable.
Yeah, it's hard to even fathom. But what's so amazing is he never let it break him.
He never lost his composure. He never let his ego dictate his actions.
He chose to focus on his goals, on what he was trying to achieve, rather than reacting to all that hate and negativity.
It's such a powerful example of discipline and choosing your battles wisely.
It is. And what I thought was really interesting was how Holiday contrasts Robinson's story with that of writers J.D. Salinger and John Fonte, who both achieved a certain level of success but ultimately struggled with ego and insecurity in a way that really impacted their creative output.
Yeah, their stories show how ego can sabotage even the most talented individuals.
Right. It's like you can have all the talent in the world, but if you let your ego run wild, it can really hold you back.
Absolutely.
And speaking of ego and leadership positions, Holiday also talks about General George B. McClellan, who was a Union general during the Civil War, who was known for his brilliance, but also for his, paralyzing self-obsession. Like, his ego was just out of control.
For McClellan, he's a classic example of how ego can cloud judgment, especially in high-stakes situations.
Right. He was so consumed by his own image and his reputation that he became indecisive, hesitant to take risks, and ultimately ineffective as a leader.
It's almost like he was more concerned with looking good than actually winning the war.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's crazy to think about, right? But it's a reminder that ego can manifest in different ways. It's not always about being loud or arrogant. Sometimes it's about this quiet, insidious self-doubt that prevents you from taking action.
And it can be just as destructive.
It can. It can.
Mm.
And it makes you think about, that balance between confidence and humility, which is something Holiday talks about throughout the book.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. You want to believe in yourself, but not to the point where it becomes delusional.
Right. So how do you see that line? Like, where's the line between, healthy self-belief and, destructive ego?
Well, I think it comes down to being able to recognize your own limitations, being open to feedback,
Mm.
and being willing to put the needs of the mission, the team, the goal, whatever it is, above your own ego.
Yeah. Like, it's not about you. It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And I think, speaking of leaders who really embodied that idea of putting the mission above their own ego, there's this great example in the book of General George C. Marshall, who was known for his quiet, effective leadership style. He was the guy behind the scenes making things happen.
A true strategist.
Yeah. And one thing that really stood out to me was he actually made the decision to not keep a diary during the war.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because he was afraid that documenting his experiences would distort his thinking,
Oh, wow.
that it would turn his reflective time into a performance for, posterity. And he's like, nope, I just need to stay focused on the present moment, on the tasks at hand.
That's incredible self-awareness.
It is. It's a powerful example of, staying grounded
Hmm.
and not getting caught up in your own narratives.
Because it's so easy to do that, right? To
Yeah.
inflate our role in past successes or create these elaborate fantasies about future triumphs.
It is. It is. It's like, you start believing your own press releases and you lose sight of what really matters.
It's about being present, being humble, and focusing on the work.
Yeah, on the work.
Mm.
And speaking of work, that brings us to the next critical stage in the journey. Navigating failure.
Mhm.
Because let's face it, setbacks are inevitable.
Oh, yeah. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Exactly. And the question is, how do we respond when those inevitable challenges arise?
Because our ego can either make us stronger or it can completely break us. It can lead us down this dark path, making us blame others or make excuses or just wallow in self-pity.
Yeah, get stuck.
Or it can be a powerful opportunity for growth and learning.
It's true. Holiday uses Katharine Graham's story to illustrate this point.
Oh, yeah. The publisher of the Washington Post.
Right. She took over after her husband died, and she faced so many challenges.
Oh, yeah. I mean, personal tragedies, financial struggles, you name it. And at a time when women weren't really in those positions of power.
Exactly. It was a whole different world. But she didn't crumble. She didn't let ego dictate her response.
She didn't shy away from the challenge either. Didn't try to blame anyone else.
Nope. She stepped up and focused on what needed to be done. It's pretty amazing.
It is, and it shows that we have a choice in how we react to those tough times. We can let ego drag us down, or we can choose to rise above it, learn from the experience, and come out stronger.
For sure. It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But it's easier said than done right.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It takes a lot of conscious effort to manage your ego, especially when you're hurting.
I think that's one of the key takeaways from the book. This idea that setbacks are inevitable.
They're part of life, part of the journey.
Right. He even quotes George Goodman, who's this financial writer, and he has this vivid analogy. He says, life's like a beautiful ball, champagne and laughter. But at some point, the black horsemen are going to come crashing in, disrupting everything.
That's a pretty intense image.
I know, right? But I get it.
It's a good reminder that we can't control everything.
Yeah, life throws those curveballs.
Yeah.
It's about being prepared mentally for those inevitable challenges.
And it's about how you respond when they do come.
Exactly. And to highlight this, Holiday contrasts Katharine Graham's resilience with John DeLorean.
The car guy.
Yeah. Who had this, amazing vision, this dream to create this iconic sports car.
And for a while, it seemed like he was going to pull it off.
Right. He did, for a while. But when things started to go south, when his company started to fail, his ego took over.
Instead of taking responsibility, he lashed out, made excuses, tried to shift the blame.
Yeah, and he even got caught up in some illegal activities trying to save himself.
Which ultimately led to his downfall.
Right. It's a cautionary tale. It shows how ego can distort our thinking and lead us to make really bad choices when things go wrong.
It's like the ego is trying to protect itself at all costs, even if it means self-destruction.
Yeah. So how do we avoid that? Like, what's the antidote to this kind of ego-driven downfall?
Well, I think one key is to avoid the blame game. Own up to your mistakes. Use those experiences as fuel for growth.
So it's about learning and evolving from those setbacks, not letting them define you.
Exactly. Holiday talks about Bill Walsh, the coach who turned the San Francisco 49ers into champions. In his first year as head coach, they had a terrible record, same as the previous season. It would have been so easy to give up or blame the players.
Totally. Just throw in the towel.
But Walsh didn't. He focused on the internal metrics, the improvements he saw in the team's execution and strategy.
So even though the wins weren't there yet, he was seeing progress.
And that's what mattered. It's about having your own definition of success and not just focusing on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable lesson for anyone in any field. Defining your own metrics of success. Because it's not always about the external validation.
Right. It's about the internal growth, the progress you're making towards your goals, even when nobody else sees it.
And speaking of internal growth, Holiday brings up the example of Malcolm X, who used his time in prison for incredible personal transformation. Like he read tons of books, immersed himself in learning, and basically transformed his entire worldview.
It's amazing how he turned a negative situation into such a positive opportunity.
Right. It shows that even in the toughest times, we have the power to choose how we respond.
We can give in to despair, or we can use the time to grow and learn.
It's all about mindset. Which kind of brings us to the next phase, sustaining success. Because maintaining that success over the long haul can be even tougher than achieving it in the first place.
It is. And that's where ego can really become a problem.
Because you've tasted success.
Yeah.
You've got the accolades. It's easy to get complacent or let it go to your head.
Oh, yeah. We need to be extra vigilant in managing our ego during those times.
So how do we do that? Like, how do we stay grounded and avoid falling into those ego traps when we're on top of the world?
Well, Holiday revisits Genghis Khan, challenging this common perception of him as just a brutal conqueror.
Okay, interesting. I'm curious to hear where this is going.
He highlights Khan's intellectual curiosity and his willingness to learn from the cultures he encountered.
So he wasn't just about conquering and imposing his will.
No, he was constantly seeking knowledge and adapting his strategies. He understood that to stay on top, he needed to evolve.
That's fascinating. So it's about staying curious and open to new ideas, no matter how successful you become.
Exactly. Don't let ego trap you in old ways of thinking.
Got it. Keep learning. Keep growing.
And Holiday brings up Bill Walsh again, who, even after winning the Super Bowl, refused to let that victory define him.
He didn't rest on his laurels.
Nope. He keeps studying the game, refining his strategies, always looking for ways to improve.
It's the mark of a true master, that constant striving for excellence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about avoiding the temptation to rewrite history, to make ourselves look better, or take too much credit. True success is about acknowledging the contributions of others and embracing the ongoing journey of growth.
I love that. So it's not about arriving at some destination,
It's about the journey itself.
the constant evolution.
And Holiday also talks about Ulysses S. Grant, who, after the Civil War, was offered incredible wealth and power.
Wow, that's tempting.
It was, but he declined, choosing instead to serve his country and uphold his principles.
He stayed true to his values.
Exactly. It's about defining what truly matters to you, letting those values guide your choices.
Not getting swayed by those shiny temptations.
Right. So we need to identify our core values and use them as a compass.
To navigate the tricky waters of success.
To stay grounded and focused on what really matters. And to illustrate the importance of delegation, Holiday brings up Dwight Eisenhower's approach in the White House.
Okay, how did Eisenhower manage his ego?
He understood that being a good leader isn't about micromanaging. He built a strong team, delegated effectively, and trusted his staff.
So he created a structure where everyone could thrive.
Exactly. Which contrasts sharply with John DeLorean, who had a very chaotic management style.
Fueled by ego and distrust.
Right. Exactly. Which ultimately contributed to his company's failure. So it's about building trust, empowering your team, creating an environment where everyone can succeed, and not letting ego get in the way of collaboration.
That makes sense. Collaboration over ego.
And Holiday introduces this great concept from Pat Riley, the basketball coach.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him. What's the concept?
He calls it the innocent climb and the disease of me.
Okay, what does that mean?
He talks about how successful teams often start with this shared sense of purpose, this innocent climb towards a common goal.
Right, everyone's working together, excited, motivated.
But then, as they start to win, ego starts to creep in.
People start focusing on their own individual glory instead of the team.
Right, and it becomes this disease, this poison that can infect the whole dynamic.
So it's about maintaining that healthy team spirit, prioritizing collaboration, celebrating collective achievements.
Exactly. Finding that balance between ambition and humility,
putting the collective good above individual recognition.
And Holiday uses General Marshall as an example, who was known for putting the mission above his own ambitions.
Really? Like, how so?
He actually turned down promotions and opportunities to lead the D-Day invasion because he felt his skills were better suited elsewhere.
Wow. He was a true example of selfless leadership.
He was, and it highlights the importance of magnanimity and forgiveness. Holding grudges and seeking revenge only hold us back.
It's about extending grace, creating a positive and productive environment.
And to emphasize substance over style, Holiday talks about prioritizing steak over sizzle.
I like that. So it's not about the flashy displays of ego.
No, it's about getting the job done, delivering value, making a real difference.
So who does he use as examples of this?
He points to leaders like Bill Belichick and Angela Merkel, who are known for their quiet effectiveness, their focus on results.
And to bring it all back to the dangers of ego-driven success, Holiday shares the story of Howard Hughes.
Ah, yes, the
Oh, no.
billionaire, the aviator, the recluse.
He was incredibly wealthy and famous, but his inability to manage his ego led to a life of isolation and regret.
It's a reminder that true fulfillment doesn't come from external validation
So it's about finding meaning and purpose in what you do.
and in how you do it. And that brings us to the epilogue of the book, where Holiday offers a powerful analogy for managing our ego.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the analogy?
Sweeping the floor.
Sweeping the floor.
Okay.
How does that relate to ego?
He compares it to sweeping away dirt and debris. We need to be constantly vigilant in managing our ego, swooping away the dust of pride, self-importance, resentment that can accumulate so easily.
I love that image. It's a constant process.
It is. Ego can sneak back in so easily.
So we have to stay aware, actively manage it.
And Holiday also emphasizes the importance of seeking feedback from others to help us identify our blind spots.
That's so important because we can't always see our own ego at work.
It's about being willing to see ourselves more clearly, even if it's uncomfortable.
He talks about his conversation with Dov Charney, the founder of American Apparel, whose downfall was a stark example of unchecked ego.
He was ousted from his own company, but refused to acknowledge his role in his demise. It's a reminder that no one is immune to the pitfalls of ego, no matter how successful they are.
So it's about constantly challenging our assumptions, being open to feedback.
And Holiday even shares his own struggles with ego, admitting that even after studying this topic, he still falls into the same traps.
Which I think is really relatable. It shows that this is an ongoing journey for all of us.
It is. It's about actively applying these principles in our lives, not just reading about them.
And learning from others.
Yeah.
Both those who have mastered their ego and those who have been consumed by it.
Exactly. By understanding the patterns and pitfalls, we can better equip ourselves to avoid the same mistakes. So as we wrap up this exploration of ego is the enemy, it's clear that managing our ego is crucial for success and for living a truly meaningful life.
It's about staying humble, embracing challenges, and always seeking growth and learning.
Prioritizing love, forgiveness, and the pursuit of excellence in everything we do.
And remembering that the journey of self-mastery is never truly over. It's like one of the things that really resonated with me was how Holiday talks about, measuring our progress, not just by those external markers of success.
Right, not just the awards and the titles.
Yeah. Like it's not all about, the trophies on the shelf.
It's about those internal metrics, aligning your actions with your values, striving for excellence in everything you do.
Yeah. And he uses the example of Tom Brady, who, obviously he's achieved incredible success in football. But what's so impressive is his work ethic, his commitment to constant improvement.
Even when he was already at the top of his game.
Right. Like most people just be like, okay, I've made it. I can coast now.
But Brady never did that. He always had that hunger to learn, to grow, to push himself further.
It's all about discipline, focus, that relentless pursuit of excellence.
And it shows that true success isn't a finish line. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah. You're never really done. There's always more to learn, more to achieve.
And to illustrate that point even further, Holiday talks about this Roman general, Belisarius.
Oh, yeah. I remember that story.
Who achieved these amazing military victories, but he was constantly being overlooked, mistreated, even punished by the emperor he served.
It's kind of a tragic story, actually.
It is, because he was so talented, so loyal, so selfless, but his virtues were almost exploited.
Yeah. He was denied recognition, stripped of his wealth, even accused of treason.
And it makes you wonder, is staying humble always the right approach?
That's a tough question.
It is. And I think Holiday uses Belisarius' story to show that true fulfillment doesn't always come from external validation.
It's about finding satisfaction in the work itself.
Knowing you did your best, even when you're faced with injustice or adversity.
It's a tough lesson, but an important one.
It is.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into ego is the enemy, what are some of the key takeaways you think our listeners should really keep in mind?
Well, I think the biggest one is that managing your ego is a constant process.
It's not a one-time fix.
No. It requires ongoing vigilance, self-awareness.
It's like you were saying earlier about sweeping the floor,
Exactly. You have to keep sweeping away that dust of ego.
because it's always accumulating.
It is. And remembering that setbacks are inevitable. They're not a sign of failure, but opportunities to learn and grow.
It's all about how you respond.
Exact.
So it's about finding that balance between ambition and humility.
Striving for excellence, but not letting ego cloud your judgment.
Right.
Knowing your values and letting them guide your decisions.
It's about the work, the journey.
And constantly learning from others, both their successes and their failures.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. Thanks for guiding us through all these important ideas.
It's been my pleasure. I hope our listener can apply these insights to their own lives and find value in this exploration of ego is the enemy.
Absolutely. And remember, as Holiday says, what will you choose? Who will you be?
It's a powerful question.
It is. It's a call to action, a reminder that we have the power to shape our own destiny.
To manage our ego and live a life of purpose and meaning.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.